Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. This is video number 3 in growing tomatoes for new gardeners. If you want to subscribe, I'll be doing an entire series on growing tomato plants, show you how to take care of them from getting them into the ground all the way to harvesting. Today's video is all about pruning. We're going to also stake these tomato plants up. That's not too exciting, pretty simple. But pruning, why do you remove the bottom leaves? Why do you remove suckers? How many do you remove? How do you do it? And it's pretty straightforward once you know. A couple of things. You have your determinate variety tomatoes that get to a set size, flower over a period of time, and then set their fruit over a period of time, over like say 2 or 3 weeks. You don't really want to prune those, so you got to know which tomatoes you have. You want to prune and manage the indeterminate varieties, which means they grow and grow and grow, and they can get 7, 8, 9 feet tall. They can get really wide. They send out all kinds of suckers, which become production stems. They're not bad for the plant, but they start producing tomatoes, and they can just get really, really big. So how do you address managing the size of your plant? You prune. Let me walk you through the garden, show you some tomato plants out there, and just talk about removing the bottom leaves. So this is a tomato plant that's approaching about 12 inches, not quite ready to really start pruning and removing suckers. It was damaged by frost. You don't want to start pruning too early. The 2 tomato plants I just showed you, they are probably almost 18 inches tall, maybe approaching 2 feet. That's when you want to start pruning. That's Captain Jack's dead bug dust. There were flea beetles or some sort of beetle or insect coming in and eating holes in my tomato leaves. A lot of my tomato plants were damaged by frost. They were a little bit weak. Insects came in. So Captain Jack's is organic. I'll talk about that in a future video. So this is an indeterminate tomato plant, and it's at a size you really wouldn't want to prune. This guy's recovering, but you could get in and pinch off the damaged leaves. The one down there is pretty much damaged. And you could go through and take out anything at this point that just doesn't look healthy. That leaf's pretty beat up. And you don't have to be gentle. Just don't tug and pull where you might damage the plant. And you can see right in here, this is the main stem coming up, leaves come out. Well, the leaf came out here, I removed it. That's a sucker, and that's going to turn into a production stem. Perfectly fine to keep. We'll talk more about that when we prune those 2 tomato plants. And then you go up the stem, another leaf is coming out, one that I removed part that was damaged, and that's a sucker coming out. And that's how they develop what we call suckers, but they're also production vines basically. They'll leaf, they'll flower, they keep growing, they leaf, they flower, and you get tomatoes off of them. You may want a bunch of those. Let's go over to another plant. This plant's completely recovering. The entire tip was frozen off by the frost, and it's sending up new side shoots from the base. Those are also what we call suckers, but they're going to turn into the main new stem. I'm going to let this one grow until it starts coming up this way, and when it gets tall enough, I'll start pruning it like I'm going to show you. But this, you know, I mean, these little dead leaves you can pinch out and stuff like that. But you don't want to start pruning until your tomato plants really probably are about 18 inches tall. You can remove some of the bottom leaves or, you know, leaves that are dying back, but the heavy pruning starts about 18 inches. And here are 3 more plants getting to about 12 inches. Nice and healthy, recovering from the frost. And I talked about in the other video, you want to put mulch down, helps conserve water, and it also keeps soil from splashing up under your leaves. Part of what we do with pruning is we slowly begin to remove bottom leaves, so as the plant gets to 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet tall, we end up with a nice gap, maybe of 12 inches or higher under here, between the ground and the bottom leaves. That lets air circulate through, helps keep diseases away because it keeps the plant dry, keeps the air flowing. It's good for the plant. Also puts a nice distance between the ground and the bottom leaves, even with the barrier, so nothing splashes up and maybe starts infecting your plant. Now, I just want to say real quick, your soil doesn't contain thousands of pathogens that are going to kill your tomato plants. Some areas, it might be more of a problem. I don't have that issue really with my soil. I use this mostly for moisture control. And also, if a lot of dirt's splashing up on the leaves, it blocks the way they basically breathe, and it can, you know, cause damage on the bottom leaves, but nothing to really worry about. So you would just start removing it about this size, even though they're not quite to that 18 inches. You could just pinch out, you know, maybe a leaf here. That's a sucker that I don't want. Pinch that out and just let that be for right now. You come over to this plant, you know, you take a look, we got a leaf coming out of in there. That's the sucker. We don't really want that there, too low. We pinch it out. Let's see if I can switch hands real quick. And then we see another leaf and sucker coming out of there. We pinch that out and we're starting to create that gap in the back. Same thing. And now there's a little gap here. We only removed a couple of leaves, a couple of suckers. We leave it alone until it gets bigger. You know, grows another 4 inches, 6 inches, starts getting to that 18-inch mark. And we slowly remove leaves. Don't overdo it. You want the leaves now to be plentiful so that the sun really helps your plants grow and take off. So, you know, every couple of days you can remove a couple of leaves, a couple of suckers, and as your plant grows up, it'll be well managed. All right, so here are 2 more plants. They're almost to that 18 inches. Now, I wish I could say, you know, do this at 12 inches, do this at 18 inches, remove 2 suckers here, remove 6 inches of bottom leaves there. It's not really done that way. It's more of an art. It's really to reduce the size of the plant for your indeterminate varieties to better manage disease and better manage the plant. You can really prune in so many different ways. Actually, with the discovery I found with using hydrogen peroxide years ago, I don't prune as much anymore because I'm able to keep the diseases off the plant. But I definitely want to create that gap in the bottom. That's what I want to show you here. So a pair of scissors, and this plant is large enough to cut off, and I'll go over this a lot. Right down here, that's a sucker. Coming up the main stem, we have a leaf that comes out. The stem continues, and then that is a sucker. Those are what you remove. Now, in this case, I'm also removing the leaf from the bottom, and I'm just gonna stop there. You know, you might say, oh, let me take this one off. There's no rush. You could take half of it if it's touching the ground. Let the leaves stay so that the plant collects the energy, gets bigger, and then, you know, in 5 days or so, we'll probably remove these 2, and that gap is starting to form. You don't want to rush pruning your plant and remove leaves too quickly, and then this needs to get staked up. All right, let's go back to the main plants. Oh, wait. Again, because people always get confused. Main stem, leaf coming out, stem continues, right in the joint. Oh, those are suckers. You don't have to remove all of them. They will turn into production stems. And for this plant, let's just say I'm not going to want these down there, so I can remove those. That's not a lot of leaves. We're going to keep those, let them collect sun. This plant's good to go for another 5 days or so. All right, so we're back to the original tomato plants, and it is really healthy. The organic dust has kept the beetles away or the insects away, and now it's time to really clean it up. So we're going to weed it, put down the mulch, we're going to put a stake in, and when a plant's about this big, your tomato roots go down pretty deep. They also go across the surface. When you put a tomato stake in at this point, don't put it really close to the main stem because it can shear off some of the roots. You just want to put the stake out about 4 inches or 6 inches. We'll do that too. It's not too exciting. But the first thing you want to do is find the main stem. Let me just make sure it's in camera, okay, or in focus. And here's the main stem coming up. That's what we're going to keep, obviously. If you cut that, you're going to lose your plant. But all at the bottom coming out the base are leaves and suckers. We're going to cut them off right now. And that's going to look drastic when I pull all this out. That's a good amount of leaves removed already. Now, we still have a lot of top growth. That's why I like waiting, or upper growth. That's why I like waiting till the plants are about 18 inches tall. They can take some pruning. And I'm going to go up one more level, but let me show you the suckers. So here we have, here we have the main stem. The leaf comes out, and then out of the joint is that sucker, which has a bad rap because it's not sucking the life away from your plant. It just becomes a production stem. Now, when you cut that sucker out, you can actually drop this in water. You want them to be a little bit smaller if you do that, maybe about here to here. You can then put this in water, it's going to root, and that's how you make a clone of your tomato plants. I'll talk about that in future videos. So we remove the leaf here. We're going to take this one too back here, the sucker and leaf. And then we have, just trying to keep it in focus, or in frame, stem, leaf, sucker there. We're going to cut that sucker out, that out. Now this is plenty of pruning right now for this plant. Still has lots of leaves. It's going to continue to grow. You can see that it's flowering. And now we have a better idea of what a single tomato vine stem looks like. Single stem coming up, leaves out, continues up, leaves out, and in the joint are the suckers. You could remove these if you want. Let's just remove them. Means we're controlling the side growth more. Right in here, leaf comes out, there's another sucker, remove that. We're reducing the suckers that are going to grow out and become these massive production vines. We're keeping it from here really as a single stem, which means it's got a leaf, we remove the sucker, goes up, leaves, puts out a flower cluster, and it would keep repeating that up the main stem. Leaf, sucker, remove the sucker, leaf, flower cluster, and it would go all the way up. And you end up with a single stem. That's called single stem pruning. I don't really do that anymore because every time you pull suckers out, you're also removing flowers and future tomatoes. So I just kind of let it go. I remove leaves from the bottom, make that 12-inch gap, 18-inch gap, depending on how big your plant gets. I remove the suckers from the bottom because I don't want all this growth coming out from under here. But when my tomato plant gets larger and it's starting to get up to this height, I start letting the suckers go. For instance, right here is the main stem, a single stem. This is the main stem here. It's branching off to the left. This is a sucker I'm going to let grow, and now I'm creating a second production stem. So this is really double stem pruning, where you then could leave this stem going and then you keep the main stem going and that branches off. It's really up to you. I'll talk more about that, but the whole idea for today is really removing the bottom leaves, identifying the suckers, removing the suckers from the bottom, and then staking this plant up because it's starting to want to fall over and vine. If it falls over and the stem contacts the ground, it will actually root out. That's how tomatoes typically grow. So let me get the mulch in here, put the stake in, tie this up, show you what this one looks like, and we'll do the same process if you want to watch it again on the plant over here. Alright, so I got in, I dropped down the mulch. We're going to prune this one up, and you can see all this growth up here. These vines coming up, those are all suckers, which again, and I'm going to keep saying it, they're not bad. You're going to see so many videos that say they suck the energy from your plant, they do that. They don't do that. This tomato plant is really healthy. It's doing really well. It's sending out the production stems, the suckers all over the place. This is going to be a massive plant. Pruning is an art. It's not an exact science, and you're just doing it, in my opinion, to remove bottom growth, for that airflow, for the disease barrier, and to manage the size of the plant. Now, don't feel like you have to be perfect with the pruning. Just start with this if you're just getting going, removing the bottom. We're going to let the tops grow, show you how we manage that in future videos. So again, main stem is right there, and here's the sucker, there's the leaf, there's the sucker. Would you remove this or keep it? Yeah, let's remove it. We have another sucker coming up from here. Yep, remove it. Coming out here, a leaf, a sucker. Yeah, let's remove that one too. On the back side, now this is where you can really have a cool plant. You could have the main stem coming up here. You could leave, this is a sucker that rooted down closer to the ground before I mulched, and you could just send this one out this way, and you could really grow two tomato plants coming out of one in a nice big V. But I'm not going to do that in this space, so we remove that too. Taking a look, we have this one that's touching the ground. Could we remove it? Yeah. We're starting to take a lot of leaves. I'm just going to take half because I'm going to remove this one that's on the ground, that sucker, And we're going to stop pretty much there with this plant. Still lots of leaves. We're starting to create that gap down at the bottom. All right, so let me step back, clean these plants up, show you the staking, how I tie the tomatoes to the stake, and then we'll be done for this video. All right, well, this is where we pretty much started the video. That's the amount of leaves I've taken off of each plant. People ask that a lot, how much do you remove? And again, this is not a science, it's an art. You don't have to prune technically if you don't want to. Don't prune your determinate varieties. If you don't know if you have a determinate or indeterminate tomato, look up the name on the internet. You'll find out what they are. It's real easy. The indeterminate tomatoes you do want to prune, in my opinion. How much is up to you, but we're going to start with removing the bottom growth, and over time we'll create a larger gap down at the bottom, and we will stake and trellis the tomatoes straight up. Pretty simple. I use jute. Leave a nice gap between the stake and the stem so you don't smash the stem into the stake, and the plant will naturally find its way. You want to probably do this every 4 to 6 inches, because if you just put one piece of string here and you leave a large gap, sometimes the pressure is too much right there and it digs into the plant. If you have more string every 6 inches or so, it just supports the plant going up the trellis. And again, we start at the bottom, main stem, leaf comes out, that's where the sucker was that we removed. Continue up, and then you start seeing the flower clusters. The stem goes up, a leaf comes out, another sucker which will become a production stem. Right in there you can see the flowers growing. So you get the idea. It's leaf, sometimes another leaf, sometimes a third leaf. Suckers come out, and then flowers, and then a couple more leaves and flowers, and it just works its way all the way up. Over here we did the same thing. Now I noticed after I was done, I've removed everything down here, and then I have a sucker coming up here. I don't want that, so remove it. And again, this is actually the perfect size to drop into water. It will root out, and then you make a clone. You don't even have to start new seeds. That's a great strategy for your determinate tomatoes. Just remove one of the suckers, put it in water. When that determinate variety dies off or needs to be replaced, you have a clone ready to go. So this is the basics for identifying suckers, removing suckers, deciding how you want to prune. Please subscribe. I'll show you how I take care of these tomato plants the entire season. Thanks so much for watching, and please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com.